Hello and welcome to Thought Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the shadow coverage map that popped up on Reddit a week or so ago, maybe even further, I don't remember the exact time frame, that illustrates the coverage of the different shadow data centers for their cloud gaming service. So originally, I decided to save this link because I wanted to make a video on kind of what shadow currently covered in the US and what they still had to cover by the end of the year, because earlier in the year, they did make the promise that they were intending to cover all of the continental US by the end of the year. So I thought that would be an interesting video. When I went to open the map today, I found out that they had another tab called Coming Soon that had two pins, one in Seattle, Washington, and one in Miami, Florida. So the topic of today's video has kind of migrated from what does Shadow still have to do to the news that there might be two new data centers coming very soon to expand Shadow's coverage. So guys, without further delay, let's go ahead and jump in and cover these two locations, one of which has a polygon associated with it, so we kind of know pretty set in stone what states is going to cover. The other one is a lot more wide open. So let's go ahead and jump into the Miami, Florida location first. Before we begin, I did want to mention that I don't think this map was officially made by Shadow. I do think it was made by one of their users or one of their community managers or something along those lines. But it has been used by their support team, so they do officially endorse it, at least in some part. But these coming soon tags maybe might not be 100% official. And maybe they have announced them and I simply missed them at some point in time in one of their announcements or one of their live streams, because I don't honestly tune into every one of their live streams. So maybe I did miss this announcement, but it is news to me at least. So the Miami, Florida location, the only thing weird about this one is the fact that the tag itself that is labeled Miami is kind of floating off in the ocean, but that could have been simply something weird when they had their data and imported it into their Google Maps to produce this map. But this location does have a polygon associated with it. So this Miami data center will cover Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And of course, there's not a lot of questioning that because there are already existing data centers pretty much cover all the other states bordering that. So there isn't a lot of room for this data center to cover more locations unless they do take locations away from a previous. With that being said, Miami, Florida is a kind of weird location simply because it's on the very southern tip of Florida. So that puts the locations in Alabama and Georgia as far as ways they could be from a Florida data center if they wanted to have a data center based in Florida. Something along the lines of maybe Orlando would have made a lot more sense, where it is much more central in central Florida, but would also be a little bit closer to locations in Georgia and Alabama, such as Atlanta, Georgia. But otherwise, it looks like this location is pretty much set in stone. So let's go ahead and move over to the Seattle location, which doesn't have a polygon associated to it. So there's a lot more questioning on what exactly states that it will cover. All right, so that leaves the Seattle, Washington data center as really the last data center to discuss in today's video. This one, of course, will cover Washington, and I'm thinking it'll cover at least Montana and Idaho. Moving on from there, technically a lot of Oregon would make a lot more sense to connect to Seattle, Washington, but right now Oregon is technically considered part of the California data center that is based in San Jose. At least the northern half of Oregon, though, would make a lot more sense to connect to Seattle, but that would, at the very minimum, divide Oregon into two, and that Shadow might not want that level of complexity when trying to onboard new members. And also it would have the complexity of migrating users from one data center to another. What I'm thinking is Oregon will officially remain part of the California data center, but they will give users, of course, the option to move to Seattle. But at least the last time I knew, when you migrated from one data center to another, you did lose all of your data and you had to start with a fresh copy of Windows. So they probably will allow the same thing moving from the San Jose to the Seattle, Washington data center, but you'll have to start with a fresh copy of Windows. That necessarily isn't a bad thing because Windows routinely gets filled up with junk as you install and uninstall things, such as files that are located in the common directory that are used, amongst multiple different applications. A lot of times those aren't removed because they might be used by something else. And sometimes applications just leave random stuff laying around. So starting on a fresh copy of Windows isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I'm betting that Oregon will remain part of the California data center. That leaves Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming as states that still aren't covered. I do think Wyoming won't be covered by Washington because it makes a lot more sense to include it in that final data center that Shadow will need. This will probably be based somewhere either in Arizona or Utah or Colorado. I'm betting somewhere around Colorado would be a nice central location, but we really don't know yet. It might be located somewhere in Arizona too. That would make Wyoming a pretty long run. Utah or Colorado would make a lot more sense as a more central area, but only time will tell there too. If they do open a data center in Colorado, then once again you have states that might make more sense to be included in the Colorado data center, such as some of the western states that are included in the Midwest area. That is based in Chicago, such as Nebraska, which is right next to Colorado, and would make a lot more sense in a Colorado-based data center. So maybe we might see some shifts in the map. Maybe Oregon might be officially part of the Washington data center, and maybe Shadow might kind of tweak and modify the map for new users that are coming into the service, and existing users might have the option to move to the new data centers once those data centers come online. All right, so that's pretty much all I had planned for today's video. I thought that the new coming soon locations were very interesting. Hopefully we see those data centers come online in the near future so more and more people can get access to Shadow's cloud gaming service. I've had great experience with Shadow thus far. Excited to see though how the service compares against newcomers on the market once Stadia and Project xCloud are actually officially available to users. But with that being said, thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you found it useful. I will share the link to this map in the description below because it is helpful even for the locations that are already online, trying to determine which area or which data center that you're going to be connecting to and if Shadow is currently available in your area. So once again, guys and gals, thanks for watching this video, and until next time, Zach out.